Welcome to Hotspot. It's time for another county cricket review. We're going to be reviewing round 2 of the LV County Championship, looking ahead to round 3 and also assessing England's new coach and what that means for Lancashire. I'm John Pennington. I'm joined once again by Matt Carter, who's been doing a lot of work for us on county cricket this season. Hello, Matt.
Hiya, how you doing?
Very, very well. How are you?
Yeah, very, very well, thank you.
Good stuff. Another really interesting week in county cricket, and one which, in general, certainly from my point of view, a good one for England. A lot of England players and potential England players in the runs and doing well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, after the initial first morning, we had Cook and Bell both failing, and it was a little bit worrying. But then both of them showed their class with pretty much daddy hundreds, which in Bell's case just missed out on winning the game. But Cook, well, that was a match-winning knock. And then we've had Steve Finn starting to regain his touch. So yeah, it's definitely been good news for England, particularly after Matt Pryor's 100 last week as well.
Yeah, let's start with Middlesex, shall we? Middlesex beating Nottinghamshire this week by 10 wickets, a really good win for them. As you say, Stephen Finn in good touch and Sam Robson as well.
Yeah, I mean, we touched on it last week, Middlesex. They are very reliant on Sam Robson, and as it is, Robson fires and they win the game. And similarly, Rogers also played a key part in that second innings chase to make it fairly straightforward. And another man with England ambitions, Eoin Morgan, he contributed a pretty handy 80 as well. And their bowling attack looked a different animal this week. Tim Murtagh was back to his best in the second innings to dispatch Notts pretty cheaply. And as we touched on, Stephen Finn is starting to regain the sort of form that got him selected in the first place. I think he's now is the leading wicket taker over these 2 rounds. And James Harris, another one, probably a little bit too soon for him with England, but he looked fairly impressive in that game after struggling a little bit last year, having made the step up from Glamorgan in Division 2. So for Middlesex, it was a positive result, but it will have worried them just a little bit. The Robson's hit form, then he probably will be selected by England, you'd imagine. So there'd still be a little bit of concern over what will happen when he goes missing. But they did get a century from Simpson, so a few other batsmen contributed. And after the disappointing loss to Sussex, it was a big positive, that one.
Yeah, sorry, man, I've cut you off there. Carry on. That's
all right. I was just going to move on to Nottinghamshire, but.
No, well, if I could just, before you do that, I'm quite interested. I thought Chris Rogers, didn't he, right at the start of the week, came out and said, yeah, Sam Robson's definitely ready to play for England. I mean, you could feasibly see Robson play for England, Finn play for England, and even Eoin Morgan, he needs to find some form. So that is, should that happen, that's going to be a big test of the six, as you've been saying.
Yeah, it's going to be a massive loss. If they were to lose those 3, I mean, the batting is the biggest. With regards to Finn, they can still bring in Toby Rowland-Jones, who is a fairly decent bowler. So the Finn loss wouldn't be as big as losing Robson and Morgan. I think Joe Denley's currently out the side. He would come in. But he obviously isn't quite the consistent runs that Robson brings. And you do worry for them a little bit if Morgan does go as well.
Okay, well, what about Nottinghamshire? I mean, they're pretty good the week before, but they've now lost a game as well. So it could be an interesting season if things like this carry on. Sort of a little bit of inconsistency, but you know, losing by 10 wickets is obviously never good. You know, not a close game for them.
No, I mean, after the promise of sort of a new dawn last week, it was almost back to square one really for them. The bowling looked relatively toothless again, as it did throughout 2013, and even the arrival of Peter Siddle, who will get better from here, I've no doubt about that. But he went wicketless, conceded a vast amount of runs, and was probably, along with Harry Gurney, they both struggled a lot. And the spin bowling stocks are a problem as well. Samit Patel is their main spinner, and I'm not sure whether he's up to that task just yet. And then the batting was showing the same problems as last year as well. They had lots of starts in that game, but no one really went on to get a big score. There was a lot of 30s, even in that second innings where they needed to bat a long time to force out the draw. I think Lum got 30 odd, Taylor got 30, Wessels got 30, and then Reed got 40, but no one could really kick on and take responsibility, and that is another problem for them. But as you say, it might just be a flash in the pan this game, or it might be reverting to last year's form. I hope it's the former of those. But it's going to be an interesting season for them. And I think what this did highlight was how important those wickets that Siddle will bring are going to be, because without him, they do lack a little bit of fight.
Okay, so next game to have a look at. Northamptonshire's draw with Durham. I mean, on the face of it, you just look at that Northamptonshire draw with Durham, but there was a bit of a twist, almost a twist in the tail. This one really did go right down to the wire, didn't it?
Yeah, it was swinging left, right, and centre. This one, that final chase. I mean, it was a game that didn't really do a lot for 3.5 days. To be honest, it just looked like it was meandering into a draw, and then Durham had a crack at trying to force the result. I mean, it was sort of showing their championship winning qualities of last season, really. This was a relatively flat surface for a final day pitch anyway, but Onions and Rushworth, they had a crack. I think they needed to bowl Northampton out inside 70 overs, and they nearly did it. But you have to credit Northamptonshire. I mean, they've got, I think, 9 properly fit players. I mean, David Willey's playing, but he can't bowl. And Rob Newton, who hadn't played a game since July 2013, he came in and showed real resolve to get them there. And together with Mohammed Azrul, I think they batted for about 10 overs to see out Durham. And at that point, it looked like there was only going to be one winner. So it's a big positive for them. It shows their character, and that in this division they're not going to be pushovers. And there was definitely a lot for them to take from it. But for Durham as well, it was an impressive showing that they came that close to winning on a pitch that wasn't offering a great deal. And for them as well, quite a few of their batsmen showed form, and that is their biggest concern. If their batsmen can show form, then the bowlers will win them enough games for them to be in the upper reaches again.
Yes, I saw a tweet. It must have been sort of halfway through that game or so that Graham Onions also, well, April should be about swinging the ball everywhere and seeming all over the place, but this has just been flat. It's almost like playing on a road, and they almost did it, but I think a really important performance for Northamptonshire, given, as you say, that they really are picking from who's available rather than their best team, which is difficult.
Yeah, I saw that tweet myself. He didn't seem best pleased, Graham Onions, but it was a little bit different from what he's used to at Chesley Street, I guess. But he'll be back there on Sunday, so hopefully he'll feel more at home when they face Somerset on Sunday.
But talking of Somerset, not a great surprise that their game against Yorkshire was drawn. I mean, I spoke to Andrew Gale on Thursday at the launch of the NatWest T20 Blast, and he sort of said he was fairly sort of downbeat about it already. He said, flat Taunton pitch. It was, sort of meandered to a draw, really, and that's where they were. I mean, interesting point that you picked out in your talking points, Matt, Adil Rashid, that he's more coming into the team as a batsman at the moment, which might be one to watch, but maybe not really what Yorkshire need moving forward.
No, I mean, he's doing really well as a batsman, Rashid, but his bowling just seems to be digressing by the ear, to be honest. I think he bowled about 27 overs, went for over 100 runs, and didn't really look like you say, it was a very flat pitch, and it was a game that was pretty much a non-event, really, and both sides will be looking to properly get their season started this weekend, I'd imagine. But I think the worrying thing for Rashid is you look at Kane Williamson's figures, who is a part-time off-spinner, and he's far more superior to Rashid's, and if Yorkshire are going to take that next step, they do need a spinner who is going to take regular wickets once the surfaces do get a little bit drier, and they are in need of that.
So we'll gloss over that one as a bit of a non-event, a draw from ball one maybe. This time last week, Matt, when we got together, you said the game I'd like to go to this week would be Edgbaston, Sussex against Warwickshire, and it proved to be a cracking game. I think this interesting start with wickets falling everywhere. Sussex chasing down well over 300, I think, to win by 7 wickets, and Ed Joyce in the form of his life. It did turn into quite a game, that one.
Yeah, it was an incredible game, and Ed Joyce's performance was just phenomenal, really. I mean, you look at that first day, and I think 20 wickets fell. Nobody else scored over 37, and Joyce scored 117 at about a strike rate of 70. It was almost like he was playing on a complete different service. It was remarkable stuff, but you have to give Sussex a lot of credit. They are setting the pace. And you look at that bowling attack, it isn't as heralded as some as say the Middlesex's attack, but you look at, I mean, McGoffin will always set regular wickets, and John Lewis is the interesting one. I mean, his career looked to be drawing to a close with Surrey last year. He was really struggling, and moving down to Hove, it's almost revitalised him. He's back in the form of his life again, and then having Chris Jordan available for them added that extra little bit of bite. And then you look at the character they showed. I mean, Warwickshire looked like they turned the tides and were favourites to win that game after Bells produced a phenomenal innings of his own. And Warwickshire recovered from about 140 for 5 to make 400 on them from there. Sussex could have been downbeat, but again, Joyce just took it in his stride, and in the end, that chase of 330 was relatively comfortable.
Yeah, on the John Lewis moving from Surrey to Sussex, it's quite a well-trodden path. A number of players have gone that way. Some have then gone back. Roy Hamilton-Brown, Ian Ward spring to mind. Chris Jordan, another one, of course. So just quite interesting how even a fairly short move, if you like, can really revitalise careers.
Yeah, we've seen it with a few players. I mean, Chris Jordan at Surrey always had talent, but for whatever reason, Surrey just couldn't utilise it. I mean, Warwickshire, another county, who've taken players from other sides and have really brought them on. I think you look at Chris Wright moving from Essex. He looked a complete different bowler once he went to Warwickshire, and Chopper as well, the opening batsman. He's really blossomed at Warwickshire, and there's a few others. Essex are a side have actually lost quite a few players who didn't really do anything at Chelmsford and then have gone elsewhere and really shone. I mean, Palladino at Derbyshire is another one in that sort of instance.
Spot on, and of course we must just sort of, can't sort of move on away from the Warwickshire game without just talking about Jonathan Trott. During that game, we understand he sort of said to students, "Look, I'm not fit enough to play," and he's going to take another extended break from cricket as he tries to get himself together and recover if he can from this sort of stress-related illness from which he's obviously struggling. I read, everybody seems to have an opinion about where he is. I'm not sure that's always appropriate because we don't know what his issue really is. But just reading things like the photographers in his garden, it's not right, is it? We really need to just leave him alone, let him try and get better, and if he comes back, great. If he doesn't, just get on with things. Would you agree with that, Matt?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, what he's dealing with is obviously difficult as it is, and to have all this intrusion as well, it's just making it just incredibly tough for him to recover from. I mean, as you say, he just needs time on his own, just to recapture his thoughts and pretty much get back to where he was. It's a real shame, and you have to feel for him, and you just have to wish him all the best for the future, and that one day he can get to just playing cricket and enjoying the game again.
Absolutely right. So yeah, echo those thoughts. Really, wishing Jonathan Trott all the best as he comes to terms with his struggles. Okay, so that sort of wraps up Division 1, Matt. We had 3 games in Division 2 as well, and a pretty good win for Essex against Derbyshire. They won that one by 53 runs. Is that margin of victory a bit closer than it suggests, or the game sort of panned out?
Yeah, definitely. I think Essex, apart from the opening day-ish, Essex were dominant in that game. I mean, to win a game from being bowled out in double figures is an outstanding achievement, really. Derbyshire only have themselves to blame. When you're bowling a side out for 80 odd, you shouldn't be getting beaten. But all it did was outline the problems they had last year with the bat. I think aside from Chanderpaul, nobody really stood up. I think once more he was left stranded. And when Madsen and Chanderpaul do fail, Derbyshire, there is very, very little left to support them. And the collapse they had from 70 odd for 2 to 154 all out, that was probably what did it for them. I know David Masters was as consistent as ever and took 6 for in that collapse, but that was where it went wrong for them. For Essex, it was a tremendous comeback, and you look at, he was excellent for England for Cook to get back into form, and then the bowlers in the second innings did well. Mills delivered a little bit on his promise. Everyone's been talking about him being rapid pace, but he hasn't actually really done that much on the field, but he had a little spell that really rattled Derbyshire, and from there was no comeback. And there were a few lusty blows from Derbyshire at the end to make it a lot closer than it should have been. But for Essex, it's an impressive win, and I think if they can continue to utilise Cook's early season form, get some runs out of him, they've got enough with the bowling to really set the pace in Division 2. And as we've seen in the past, if you can get a march on your rivals in this division, then that can be telling come the end of the season.
What are the other games then? Hampshire beating Gloucestershire by 8 wickets, and I know that you were particularly impressed with the way that James Vince was playing in this particular game. Could he be one to thrust himself into position for an England call? Maybe. Still only 23.
Yeah, I think with Vince, a lot of these players are getting talked up for England. A lot of them are similar sort of players. They're more accumulators. But Vince is someone who can bring the sort of X factor that England have lost in the absence of Kevin Peace, and he is a box office player. He is a game-changing player. Look, last year for him was a breakthrough season. He passed the 1,000-run barrier, and then in this game against Gloucestershire, he just looked a class apart from everybody else. You look at that first innings, 140. I think it came off about 180 balls, and then in the second innings, he just smashed 50 off 30 to make the chase of 200 relatively comfortable. And he does look like he is starting to really develop into the player that the early promise suggested.
And the final game to have a look at, Worcestershire beating Kent by 125 runs. That's a really good win for them, and a step in the right direction, particularly as they've lost a few players over there. We talked about this last week, but Alan Richardson and obviously Syed Ajmer not there yet as well. So a really good win for the Royals.
Yeah, I mean, this season no one's given Worcester a crack really, and then you look at them, the side is really inexperienced, but that was a terrific performance. It was a really close game, and for Worcestershire to have come out and have won the key sessions in that one, it was a massive result. And you consider Moeen Ali, who they were so reliant on last season, didn't do that much with the bat. Ben Cox was actually the one who played the pivotal innings for them. I mean, when he came to the crease in that second innings, they were 100 odd for 5, I think it was, and about the same number of runs in front. And Cox hit 89 and pretty much took the game away from Kent. And then with the ball, Gareth Andrews seems to have found another gear this year, and the other young seamers, Russell and Morris, both supported him. And for now, at least, the loss of Richardson isn't being felt that heavily. I mean, things will get tougher for them, but so far so good for Worcestershire. And if Syed Ajmer does arrive at some point, then yeah, it could be a better season than the Doom Merchants forecast for them.
Great stuff. Well, let's look ahead then. We've got 6 fixtures starting tomorrow. The first one that we have a look at, Division 1, Durham against Somerset. Both of these teams drew the games that finished this week, so will be understandably keen to get off the mark, and we would expect Chester Street to have a little bit more in it for the bowlers than both Wantage Road and the county ground down at Taunton.
Yeah, I think Somerset will be in for a bit of a shock at Chester Street after the conditions
they up there.
enjoyed at Taunton last. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you'd have to make Durham's favourite for this one, as you tend to always do at Chester Street. I mean, they are such a monster at their home ground, but Somerset have the batsmen to give the likes of Onions and Rushworth a challenge. But it's going to be an interesting one, because really for Somerset, we don't really know what sort of side they're going to be this year, and you'd imagine this game will give us some sort of idea whether they're going to be challenging in the Orange, or it could be a season of relegation worries. So it's going to be an intriguing one. For Durham, the key thing for them is whether their batsmen can get enough runs, but the signs were decent at Wantage Road. Richardson played fairly well. Jennings got some runs, as did Borthwick and Mustard as well. So, yeah, you would make Durham's favourites for that one.
Next up, we've got Lancashire against Warwickshire. I think that Peter Moores is still going to be at the helm for this one for Lancashire. That could be quite interesting against a Warwickshire side of the course Ashley Giles is associated with, and he's obviously beaten him to the England job. Warwickshire obviously losing this week, so they're going to be hopeful of getting back on track. Lancashire, they lost the week before, didn't they, to Nottinghamshire. So this is actually, I'm not going to call it a relegation scrap already, but it's quite a big game down there at the sort of low reaches of the table, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an important one for Lancashire. Having been promoted and lost the first one, if they were to lose this, then things might start to get a little bit teshy, and as I say, with Moores imminently departing, it suddenly looks a little bit up in the air for Lancashire, and you do worry for their batsmen. Again, Old Trafford, I'd imagine, is going to have a little bit of spice in it for the bowlers, and Warwickshire, although they didn't bowl great against Sussex, considering the attack they've got, Barker and Wokes and Wright, they did struggle, but I think that's going to be the key battle, whether Lancashire's batsmen can improve enough to get the runs they need. I mean, Prince played well against Nottinghamshire, but apart from that, the likes of likes of Reece struggled a bit, and they'll be looking for more from them. But it is a thin batting lineup. But then at the same time, Warwickshire can't afford to get bowled out for single figures like they did against Sussex, because Lancashire will come at them in a similar fashion. James Anderson at Old Trafford, he's going to take some stopping, and yeah, they will need to bat a lot better than they did in that game. Even with the likes of Bell on the books, they will need to improve a lot.
Okay, and we've got Yorkshire against Northamptonshire, the other game of Division 1 this week. Yorkshire, no doubt, will be pleased to get back up to Headingley. Northamptonshire, we've talked a lot about how they're struggling to pick a fit team, if you like. So Yorkshire must be overwhelming favourites to get off the market, or certainly win this one.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Yorkshire, like Somerset, it's a case of should hopefully be able to suss out what sort of side they're going to be this year in this one. They certainly have all the tools to challenge for top honours. But Northamptonshire, no one really gave them much of a chance for them, but they just about hung on. I hope to get it a little bit closer in this game. They are lacking in bowlers and batsmen, which is obviously evident with the injury crisis. I don't think there's not been any further news on a new overseas player coming through. There have been a few names mentioned, but nothing concrete yet. And there's a lot of pressure on the likes of Maurice Chambers to pick up the wickets for them. Certainly the batting, I think, for Northampton should stand up well in this division. You look, they're batting low down to number. I think they have the keeper coming in at number 9 against Durham, which is quite remarkable in this modern day, really. But as I say, Yorkshire will be favourites, but don't rule Northampton out. We've seen the character they've got already.
Division 2 then, we start with Derbyshire against Hampshire. I suppose in a way this is going to be it's going to be an opportunity to see whether Hampshire can take the form that they've showed at home and apply that when they go up to Derbyshire as well.
Yeah, Hampshire are really impressive against Gloucestershire. Actually, they've struggled the last few years. They've just sort of meandered around 4th and 5th in division without ever really threatening to get back into the top flight. But against Gloucestershire, they did look good. The attack has been boosted by Kyle Abbott. He had an instant impact, really. You think he triggered a Gloucestershire collapse from a position of relative safety to bowl them out for 300. And Matt Coles as well should enjoy conditions at Derby. It's looking a cloudy day today in Derby. If the conditions are similar, if the conditions are similar to what they are now, you wouldn't expect it to be a massively high-scoring game. But I mean, you look at Hampshire's batting as well with Adam Wheater coming in at number 8, he's got a first-class average of 40. It is probably the best batting lineup in the division, especially with Michael Carberry out to prove a point, and he got that century against Gloucestershire. It's going to be tough for Derbyshire, and you just wonder whether their batsmen will be able to handle these difficult conditions as well as Hampshire will be able to.
Next one for us to have a look at is Glamorgan against Gloucestershire. Another player I spoke to on Thursday was Michael Hogan, the Glamorgan fast bowler. He was pretty happy, obviously, with the way they've started the season, and obviously very aware of his history, because he sort of said, well, that's the first time Glamorgan won their first game of the season since whenever it was. I'd say better history than me, I've forgotten already. But another thing he said, I don't know if he meant to say it, but he came up with a sort of different take on an old cliche. He said, you're only as good as your next game. Well, this is Glamorgan's next game, and I suppose this is going to prove just how good they are if we apply that to this game.
Yeah, these are two teams who are both in a similar sort of position, really. They both feel that they can mount a promotion challenge, but then, on the other hand, both could realistically finish 8th, 7th or 8th in the table. That win for Glamorgan over Surrey, a lot was made about Surrey's capitulation, but you look at how well Glamorgan played it, especially chasing that total of 150 or whatever it was. I mean, Surrey had just been absolutely ousted for 81 by Hogan and Wag, and then Glamorgan made complete light of that. And they are looking good under Toby Radford. You look at their squad, and they have got some decent players. I'm not sure if Jack Rudolph has arrived yet, but with him joining the batting lineup, joining the likes of Murray Goodwin and Jim Allenby, they should get enough runs. I don't think Allenby will be available tomorrow, and then the bowling, Hogan is always going to pick up wickets, and then I think the crucial thing is whether Wag can continue to support Hogan, because last year Hogan was the standout bowler in the division, but the support was pretty much minimal, and if Wag can consistently do that, then Glamorgan might just challenge in the upper reaches and shock a lot of people.
And then the final game to look at is Kent against Leicestershire. Leicestershire's first game, I think, after their first game was postponed with Derbyshire.
Yeah, I imagine Leicestershire will be chomping at the bit to really get their season started. It is strange and obviously unfortunate that they haven't been able to get started yet. Starting against Kent is a fairly decent one to get underway against. I think these were the bottom two sides last season, so both will be looking for improvements. For Kent, it was a funny sort of defeat at Worcestershire. Last year, their batsmen excelled. Stevens and Key and Brendan Nash all scored heavily, yet the batting pretty much subsided against Worcestershire twice. And while the bowling stood up relatively well, Doug Bollinger made an instant impact, and you would imagine he'll be amongst the leading wicket takers in the division. But if they are to improve, their batting will need to make inroads on what they showed against Worcestershire. But history from last season suggests that performance was a winner. For Leicestershire, it's going to be tough this year. They should improve on last year. I mean, it wouldn't take a lot, to be honest, but they've certainly got Ramesh Sarwan available for most of this season. That should offer some support to Ned Eckersley, and then Dan Redfern has proved in the past that he can score in this division. The biggest concern for them is where the wickets are going to come from.
Okay, so as per last week, Matt, we're going to ask you which of these 6 games, if you could go to one of them to watch, to report, whatever, where are you headed?
I think that game at Old Trafford, Lancashire and Warwickshire, is an intriguing one. As you mentioned, it isn't a relegation battle, but I think there is a lot to play for. I mean, no one wants to lose their opening 2 games and get themselves on the back foot. Warwickshire found that last year with a sticky start that it can be very, very tough to then mount any sort of challenge if you don't start well. And then obviously the Peter Moores effect. Will Lancashire be inspired to see him off with a victory? I think it should be an emotional sort of contest, and there'll be a lot to prove there. It'll be interesting to watch how Anderson goes against Ian Bell, and I think that's probably the standout one. But there are any number of games you could go to and enjoy yourself, I would imagine.
Absolutely. I mean, I would be with you if I was to pick one out. That's where I'd go. Get up to Old Trafford. Haven't seen the new ground since the redevelopment, but seeing as that's where you would be, and I'll sort of parallel, I think I'd head your way, Matt. And Derbyshire Hampshire sort of strikes me as one to watch, really, to see just how well Hampshire are playing, if they can sort of keep up their good form from last week. So that would be the one that maybe I'd get on the A52 and hop across to Derby for a couple of days. Carry on.
It'd be interesting to see how James Vince actually fares in difficult conditions. That could be a battle worth watching, him against Groenvold and Foote and players like that. It could be another test of his character.
Okay, we've talked a little bit about Peter Moores, but let's now focus on him. He is, of course, now the New England head coach. He takes over from Andy Flower. It's been quite a protracted sort of succession, if you like, because Ashley Giles was in there as interim coach while he's now been effectively relieved of his positions. Moores comes in. Matt, your reaction really to Peter Moores coming in as England coach. Is he the right man? Is he the only man for England?
Yeah, I mean, the pool of contenders wasn't exactly vast, was it? And it is a bizarre situation, really, when you think about it. I mean, if someone had said to you 12 months earlier that Peter Moores would be back as the England coach, you would have laughed it off. But in a weird way, it is a risky sort of move. Obviously, he didn't do that well in his first stint, and in sport, it doesn't tend to ever work that well when you go back. But he has got a point to prove. He has got a track record in county cricket as good as anyone. You just wonder if England maybe could have taken a risk on someone like a Trevor Bayliss. But I think it's going to be intriguing how Moores goes. Obviously, he hasn't got the issue of Kevin Peterson this time around. I know that was brought up in the press conference earlier, as it was always going to be. But yeah, it's difficult to see how he's going to go, really. But it's definitely an interesting case of affairs, really, that he's now back in the England role.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. A year ago, no one really would have sort of seen this coming in a way. I mean, he has an excellent county record. He's very, very highly rated, and you can see why. Winning the title with Sussex, going to Lancashire winning their first title for 77 years, I think it was. I mean, it's now time really to see how he has progressed as a coach since the KP fallout in 2009, because it wasn't just KP that weren't particularly happy with the way he was doing things. So it's going to be very interesting to see how much he's learned, how much he's developed as a coach since then. The thing I find quite interesting was last night, I mean, it became fairly clear that Moores was going to be appointed well before this morning's press conference for whatever reason, but Paul Farbrace was being mooted as a deputy to Moores, or whether it's going to be a two-man coach. And I thought that could be quite interesting, but that doesn't seem to materialise. So I'm not quite sure what's happened there, but I think you're right. The proof of the pudding will be in the eating, because he's got to pick up an awful lot of pieces. So again, another KP fallout, another 5-0 Ashes whitewash, a pretty poor performance in the World 2020. So in a way, he's almost started with not much to work with. So has he got an awful lot to lose?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, England are in a real mess, and there isn't a lot for him. They can't get a lot worse, to be frank, considering how poor they were in that World 2020 against the Netherlands, which that defeat probably put pay to any chances Ashley Giles had prior to that. On the Paul Farbrace situation, I mean, I was also under the impression that he was going to be named as the assistant. I don't know whether they're still waiting for contract talks with the Sri Lankan Cricket Board or what with that situation, but that will help. I mean, Farbrace is someone who has had success in the international arena, and obviously is a decent coach given Sri Lanka's World 2020 win, and he would be a good asset to Moores' coaching setup. But I say you just have to hope that Moores has learnt from his previous experience. I mean, delivering that kind of championship to Lancashire was a massive achievement after so long, and the pressure he was under there to finally get that one delivered. And it is just going to be a case of whether he has improved and learned from the previous fallout and has become a better coach because of that.
Yeah, I mean, to borrow a term from politics, I think a Moores Farbrace ticket could be very attractive. I rate Farbrace very highly. Done well with Kent. Yorkshire didn't want to lose him to Sri Lanka, and obviously we see where Sri Lanka have done the last 4 months or so. Finally, then, Matt, before we sort of close this hotspot off for the week, the effects that may have on Lancashire, given the fact that now Peter Moores is gone, they're going to have to now look for a new coach. What are your sort of thoughts on how they're going to respond? As you say, they've just got promoted, so really survival is key for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Lancashire, what they were hoping was to groom Glenn Chappell into the coach eventually. It may be that Chappell will now have to settle into that role earlier than was imagined. I mean, if there's anyone who knows Lancashire inside out, then it is him. I mean, and that is the route that I imagine they will take. Whether it is the right one, only time's going to tell. But he certainly got the passion for the role and knows the club. It is going to be difficult for him, but you have to wish him the best of luck if he does get it.
Yeah, and an interesting point that I sort of remember the time when Jos Buttler moved up to Lancashire. I'm sure that he sort of said, "I'm looking forward to working with Peter Moores, how he can bring my wicket keeping on." So a little bit of a blow for Jos Buttler that Peter Moores is now off for England, but who knows? He might well pick him for England and work with him there. So it could work both ways.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's just one of those things that can't be helped, really. Like you say, I mean, Buttler, he probably will be spending just as much time working with Moores in England as he will be with Lancashire. I'd imagine he is nailed on to keeping one day international in 2020s. The test situation for the wicketkeeper is still pretty much up in the air. Pryor has shown a little bit of form, but if Buttler can show some sort of form in these opening championship games, then you never know, he could be the test wicketkeeper as well. So it may be that Lancashire don't actually see that much of him anyway.
That is a good point, and I think promising England wicketkeepers of the future, the immediate future and the long-term future is a discussion we could have on another day, Matt. So we'll wrap this one up here. Thank you very much for your time as ever. Enjoy the week of county cricket.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you very much for watching our latest views on county cricket here on Cricket World TV.